You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul. Spin me round, roll me up, fucking sucker. Stop it down, roll me up, put some. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of They're Gonna Call It a Hard Foul. I'm here with my crazy ass brother, Mike, as usual. We'll get advice from him later. We'll ask some questions of him. But on this episode today, we're gonna break down the Celtics' disappointing loss to the Chicago Bulls, the meltdown in the fourth quarter, in particular on the defensive end, and also picking up three T's and Joe Mazzulla kind of making a fool of himself, walking off the court at the end of the game. On top of that, second half of this pod, I interview Cameron Tabatabaie of contributor of the Celtics Wire and USA Today, and also the host of the very good Celtics Lab Podcast. We get into the Celtics season, but also, more importantly, the Celtics developmental pipeline in Maine to Boston. Mike, not a good way to kind of come back from this break. With the NBA Cup. And really, this might have been, I thought, the poorest performance in a long time because not only did they not shoot well and then not really adjust to not shooting well, they also let it affect other parts of their game, I thought. And I thought the defensive effort in the fourth quarter in particular was really disappointing to me. The Bulls, particularly Kobe White, was able to penetrate and get wherever he wanted. And not only that, the Bulls had the Celtics so spread out and confused that there was never any help when penetration got to the paint. There were like uncontested layups in that fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I think it was like 30 to 15 they got outscored or something ridiculous like that. They were just dominated. Um,
yeah.
and I
Couldn't
look,
cover the pick and
yeah, but
randomly double teaming guys and leaving guys open in the paint. I don't know. Yeah, it was bad. I think you hit it on the head. The Celtics, maybe that long time off, they came out obviously rusty, but the lack of adjustments on offense. I mean, the the amount of threes that they took, it wasn't off like driving to the hoop and kicking. It was off of dribble and shoot and passing around the perimeter, at
Mhm.
least in the second half. Um, and you're playing against a team with no shot blockers too,
No,
and I don't understand
one
why.
of the worst defensive teams in the league too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just really bad all around, and another home loss where I know last year's emphasis was really to protect home court. It doesn't feel that way this year. This is their fourth loss at home. We're not even halfway through the season. That's something to keep an eye on because in past Celtics teams, they haven't protected home court in the playoffs, and we'd see games like this at home. And they've lost some close ones at home, and last night was the first time they really got dominated. But even coaching, like I was hoping that Mazzulla would switch things up on offense and put Porzingis down on the post and just start feeding him the ball against guys half his size, where he's the most efficient post scorer in the NBA, especially foul line extended as well. I mean, for the majority of the second half, Porzingis was hanging out around the three-point line. And that's to create lanes to the basket. But when you guys don't drive to the hoop, what's the point? So put him down the post. Or in past games, when Tatum or Brown were out or Hauser has been out, we've played to our strengths and we've gone double bigs. Um, and we did a little bit of that last night with Porzingis now, but when we were going to our bench, it was going to Springer, who is a fringe NBA player, and he looked like that last night in the first go around. I don't know why he came back out for the second half. He's not a good player. He's just not. And he wasn't playing good defense, which is what they, tout him out to be. He was getting beat off the dribble right to the hoop. He was part of that problem at the end of that third quarter. I just can't. I don't think there's any way anymore to justify DMPs for Luke Cornett with the way he's been playing this year. And you didn't have any rim protection last night. You didn't have any rim runners on offense last night. He does do things that Al Horford doesn't do, as far as rebounding the ball on the defensive end, rebounding the ball on the offensive end. Um, And you're playing a guy who can't shoot and he wasn't defending. So I didn't understand that lack of adjustment last night. I thought Cornette really could have helped you. Um, but yeah, it's a bad loss. This is a bad loss. They really didn't adjust offensively at all against a team that can't defend the basket. You could have got whatever you wanted at the rim all night, and they were just launching threes and they weren't hitting them. Yeah, and in general, I think the shooting this year isn't the same as last year, especially with Holiday and Jaylen Brown. So I'd like to see some of that stuff from last year come back. They would post up Jaylen Brown, they would post up Jason Tatum, they would post up Drew Holiday, and I don't think we see as much of that this year.
I
Those are things that help them win games like this last year is that they get those points in the paint.
I kind of see this differently. I see this as a continuation of the Celtics playing down to opponents that aren't on their level, and
Yeah.
I haven't gotten overly concerned about that yet, for this reason, because when they have played better teams, they've shown the ability this season to flip that switch and play at a level that we're more accustomed to seeing out of Celtics basketball. So be if those bad habits that they kind of displayed in these games carried over to the games against the Bucks or the Cavaliers or some of those other better teams, I'd be a lot more concerned right now. But they have shown, like other championship teams in the NBA, the ability to kind of change the way they play and be more focused in games that seem to matter more to them. So I do
Mhm.
think that's part of what happened last night. The Jordan Springer Cornette thing, I wonder if they're trying to showcase him a little bit because I do think they want to trade him, meaning Jordan Springer. So I wonder if they're hoping if something clicks to open up that roster spot and see if you can bring Lonnie Walker back here. I do think that is something they want to do. I also think there is an element of, giving a guy a shot. The Bulls play five out. That's obviously difficult when you go two bigs. Um, but there was opportunity to play either Cornet or Queta. Again,
Mhm.
they'll get their minutes though this season, so it's not you know it's not the end of the world. The thing that bothered me about this game, as opposed to their other losses this year, was they've had games where they've shot shitty, right? Like Memphis was a great example of that, and probably should have adjusted a bit offensively at times.
Mhm.
And Memphis, I think, had a lot to do with that too. Memphis is a good team, but
But they were getting good looks against
they were
Memphis.
getting good
So
looks against,
they were
yeah.
driving, they were moving the ball.
And
Yeah.
and I didn't feel like it let them affect other parts of their game. And like I thought the defense
Mhm.
was they were exhausted team, but they
They
played
just
as
got
hard.
beat.
They just got beat.
Yeah.
They played as
Yeah.
hard as they could.
Mhm.
But last night there were three possessions where they gave up three. They gave up two offensive rebounds. Two of them led to wide open threes at 6 points. The other
That's
one,
why I wanted
Levine,
my boy in the game. Yeah.
yeah, the other one where Levine just didn't realize the shot clock was going off, and then the Celtics happened to get the ball back by accident. Um, and then the defense really suffered. And that, the other part of this was, and the one guy I'll give some latitude here is Jaylen Brown, because obviously his mother's house was broken into this week. He's probably playing a little bit on edge. He had some personal turmoil, and you wonder how that affects a player, especially when it's your mother's. You feel like her safety and stability is you know being questioned a little bit, right? But that jump ball situation. First of all, the refs got the call right.
It
Pritchard
was
was
bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre.
Pritchard was the first to the ball. Maybe
Yeah.
when he blew the whistle, it was more Jaylen Brown, but refs do blow the whistle late sometimes, intentionally, just to make sure they get things right. Um, but it
Mhm.
was only like a
And
half
also,
second. Go ahead.
it's not the ref's fault, Joe, that you don't have a challenge anymore. So,
No,
like,
they actually did have a challenge, I believe, because it's weirdly like they got that challenge right, even though it was called to a foul. So I believe they still
oh,
kept.
really?
Yeah, I still believe they
Oh,
kept
well.
that challenge.
Then use your challenge if you're that upset. Like,
Yeah,
what are
and
you doing?
don't jump out on the floor and then be surprised you get a T
Exactly.
because you jump out on the floor and you're essentially in the ref's face. You deserve that T.
Yeah.
Um, the Tatum. a few possessions later
Ooh.
was also something that bothered me. He Tatum got fouled down the other end, but you're in a game right now where it wasn't quite over yet. It was an 8-point game with 4 minutes to go, and you're giving them free points. The Celtics gave them three free points. They gave them a possession
Yep.
advantage when you're already losing. Just completely kind of unfocused and losing their minds. And then I just didn't feel like there was the leadership. And this is something that I'm not gonna. This hasn't been systematic. This hasn't been something that we've seen for really going back to last season at all, where I thought leadership let them down. There was no one to redirect them, whether it was Tatum or Brown or Joe Mazzulla, that we need to refocus our efforts here. Yeah, our shots aren't going, but we got to refocus our efforts on defense. We got to start attacking the basket. Um, you
No,
know,
they were off last night. They
we
were just
call
off.
Porzingis to the post, run a pick and roll with Porzingis and White or Porzingis and Hall, whatever it might be, something to settle them down. They just weren't there. And then it accumulated with what I just thought was an embarrassing episode where Missoula is looked like he was offering the ref to fight. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's what he said, but that's how it looked. And
It could be suspended.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You are the face of the franchise. You are the leader of the franchise. You expect the players to follow your lead. And I think I've been, Mike, on this pod. I was pretty forgiving of a lot of the stuff a couple seasons ago where he's put in a tough spot. I thought you know, I gave him his due last year when it was deserved with the way he kind of grew from a lot of the stuff that happened in his first season. And then certainly this season, I've been impressed with a lot of
He's a great coach.
the acumen
Yeah, he's a
and
great coach, but
the
what do
game
you do?
situations. But that last night, that was
Yeah.
embarrassing. And
Yeah, he's a great, yeah, you can be a great coach and still,
be,
have a bad day and that you can't
yeah,
do shit like that.
you
Like,
can't, you can't. And he may be
no.
suspended. And you're the Boston Celtics. You're the champs. You have the second best record in the league. You win your next three games, you're still playing 800. You're 24-6, and you're still playing 800 basketball, which is just a remarkable thing to continue to do over and over again. Um, but that last night, just overall, uh, it left a bad taste in my mouth how it went down. I'll be able to get over it if they bounce back against Chicago on Saturday and then they win the next two, Philly and Christmas, and then Orlando or however those line up the order of it.
So
Uh,
Orlando first. Is that game in
right.
Orlando or home?
I'm not sure. Orlando's really floundering right now, though. Even they've lost some home games where they're just in a tough
Oh,
spot. You're getting them at a good time. If unfortunate for them with all this injuries. But last night
a
just
good thing.
wasn't
Yeah.
great. It wasn't great. And the
No,
Mazzulla thing bothered me a lot.
and I'll get back into that with the Zool thing. Good thing about the Christmas Day game is Embiid's probably going to play, so
It's a
that'll be
good time
fun.
too. 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock's a good time for a Christmas Day game,
Is
man.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah, probably. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Um, so at least we'll be able to watch, watch superstars out there. I don't, I think it's better for to have I don't know, just brings more to the game. If Embiid doesn't play, I feel like it's just like a Celtics blowout, and if he plays, it could be more intriguing at least. But yeah, I don't understand what was going on last night. Maybe something's going on with the players and with Joe over this last week, or they're just not in a good place mentally for last night's game. But it was something I was expect from like Charlotte, not from this team. And what Joe did after the game isn't acceptable. I don't want to beat it more than we have to. It just was a shitty product last night. And the thing was like they were in the game, they were winning for the majority of it by
yeah.
like 4 to 6 points. So it
But
was just like
the one thing that has been a problem, Mike, that we should talk about is it was another instance where start the fourth quarter, Jason Tatum comes off the court, and the minutes without Tatum this year have reminded me a lot more of previous seasons than the championship season. Last year, when Tatum
I
went to
think
the
yeah.
bench, they were excellent. This year,
Well,
it hasn't been great.
yeah, and I think this year it's because the inefficiency of Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday.
Mm.
offensively are really hurting them. And Brown's still putting up good numbers, but his 3-point shooting has not been good, and his free throw shooting is still suspect sometimes, and he's not carrying the team as well as he should when Tatum's not out there, and Holiday not hitting his corner threes. He's just not consistently hitting them, and so there's times where he can't even play. And we're going with Pritchard, which helps you offensively, but on the defensive end, it can hurt you against good teams or against good offensive teams, which
It hurts you against
the
Memphis.
Bulls,
It hurts you against
and,
Memphis.
and quite honestly, the Bulls are a good offensive team.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
something they are. They're not a good defensive team, and that's why they have a losing record, but they can score.
they can score.
Um, yeah, and so you were kind of getting beat up on both ends last night, and in the fourth quarter, Holiday wasn't on the floor. And that's happened a couple times this year. And obviously,
It's
come
happened when they've
playoff
been
time,
down. It's
yeah,
been
ob-
interesting.
and that kind of hurts you because defensively he can keep you in the game.
Oh, he can be a
He
game
can keep
changer.
you,
He makes game changing.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no, and I wonder if you got to stop playing lineup Porzingis and Brown when on those Tatum's off minutes, because they were just like the threes weren't going, nothing else was happening. Brown clearly was not himself last night, and again, he's the only one I give a built-in excuse to. He went through a lot
He
this
wasn't himself
week.
against the Wizards either. So I
Yeah,
don't know. He's been hurt this year too. So
yeah,
I know that's awful what happened to his family with the break-in, but he's had some like little injuries here and there.
yeah.
And I was bringing up earlier too, like you have your weapon back. And we saw it on the defensive. We did see it for 3 quarters on the defensive end with Porzingis last night, protecting the rim. He had some really good plays. I mean, the offense for the Bulls wasn't. It was that bench energy lineup that Scals was talking about that came into that game that got him back into it. Getting the offensive rebounds, getting extra shots, and the Celtics fell apart. But for 3 quarters, the Celtics defense was pretty good last night, and it was Porzingis. Where they're not using Porzingis, I think, as well as they could be, is on the offensive end. I don't think he's getting enough touches around that free throw line and inside the paint. Where when things aren't working out, you start just dumping it in there. He's gonna score, number one. And number two, it's gonna open up everything else. I just think
And they did
there's
that
ways to get.
in the second quarter, right? Like Porzingis, I think
They
had
did,
0 points, and all of a sudden he kind of
and they went away from it.
yeah, yeah.
And something else that they did last year is they would post up Jaylen Brown, they would post up Drew Holiday, they would post up Jason Tatum. And now Holiday posts himself up. Like he'll just go from the 3-point line all the way down to the post and get his little hook shot off. But Tatum and Brown, I'm not seeing much of that this year, and they were efficient scoring there. And maybe Tatum doesn't have to do it because he's still being efficient with his scoring this year. And actually, his 3-point shot is obviously way better than it was last year. But maybe that's something Jaylen Brown should be doing more of, where his 3-point shot isn't what it was last year. Maybe that's something that they could be implementing more of to help this team when the shot's not falling.
I think too they got to figure out this on-off issue with Jason Tatum because you can't start the fourth. I believe it started with a 4-point lead, um, and then all of a sudden just be down 10 points because you can't score and you can't get stops or whatever it may be. Uh, I don't know if you switch it up the third quarter rotations where it's Brown and Porzingis together because you want to get that Porzingis his extra rest around the quarters. Um, and then you have Tatum to start the fourth, but you need to figure that out. And
That's a good solution.
it's been a bit of a problem this year, where it hasn't been in the past years. I believe it's not as dramatic as I thought. I believe it's like just only like a +5 or -5, but it feels like maybe some of that was made up in the games he was out, as opposed to the
Mhm.
games he was there. Anything you want to bring up
I'm
about?
sure. I'm sure Tony Maserati's going to have a ton to say today
Well,
on Falcon Maz.
it's going to feed into narratives if you're into that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We'll feed into narratives.
And these narratives are real. I know that Adam Silver's talking about the 3-point shot. And so we will see what happens. There's some crazy stuff out there about getting rid of corner threes, and I think there's some traction to it. I think they're looking at baseball and some of the changes they made. I don't think
I
it's
think
a
it's a
good
big
idea.
mistake. I think it's a big
I
mistake.
do. I think it's a big mistake. And also, when you think about the Celtics, they'll just shoot threes from other places because they hit them. So
Yeah, so
yeah.
scoring is up in the league, and it's got a lot to do with the three-point shot. I think the game's more wide open because of it. If you want a more slow grinding game, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for something closer to the 90s, or even the early part of this century, I don't know if that's really going to be attractive to the viewer at the end of the day. But I just I don't like changing the fundamentals of the game. It's not like baseball where there was a pitch clock issue delaying everything, and things like that.
Mhm.
You know, um, Mike, we're getting into the holiday season here. Mike, let's ask some quick questions. Um,
All
First of
right.
all, we're getting into the Christmas season, right? So Merry Christmas,
Yes.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
I know some people like to say
Yes.
Merry Christmas because they're supportive of Christmas. If you're a foot soldier on the war against Christmas, happy holidays, whatever you prefer. Um, Mike,
Yeah, I'm a Fox News contributor. There's Santa Claus is white, and Christmas is the best holiday in the world. And if you don't like it, fuck you.
there you go.
Isn't that what they do on Fox News? Isn't that how
Well,
they
I
handle
mean,
it?
I'm just surprised Pastor Mike would use that type of language. Pastor
Well,
Mike,
I just want to go on Fox News and explain to them that Santa Claus isn't. Never mind. There
yeah,
might be
well,
children listening. I
Pastor,
was just gonna say an argument on how Santa Claus looks. Well, he's make believe.
Pastor
So who
Mike,
cares?
Pastor Mike.
Yeah.
Celtics, have had a lot of great success in their history, but who are the biggest sinners in Celtics history? And you would put coal in their stockings.
Mhm. Yeah, Rick Pitino.
Rick Pitino,
Rick
yep.
Pitino, yeah, right? Rick Pitino comes to mind right away. I mean, he sold us a bunch of junk. He was trying to do like full court presses and stuff. He signed Travis Knight to 7 years. Like he traded away all the good players that they had and talked shit about them as they went out the door. Whether that be like, oh, now I'm losing my train of thought. Who was the guard? The guard he traded away that was like a pretty good three-point shooter, had a good career after he left. David Wesley.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
God.
I
Uh,
mean, his worst trades were Chauncey Billups and Joe Johnson.
Well, obviously, yeah, but I'm
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
even that team that only won like 15 games, like
Yeah,
pushing Rick Fox
David,
out the door.
well, he also pushed Red Auerbach up the door.
And put, yeah, like he
Yeah,
did so much crap. And then
yeah.
like he had these guys that came with him, like these Italian guys who acted all cool and like with oh, like he's a genius and like, he knows what he's doing and all this stuff. And like he was just a piece of shit. He was a
He
horrible
didn't have a
coach. He was a
plan.
horrible.
The guy
No.
who wrote a book, Success is a Choice. This
Hmm.
giant asshole. He didn't have a plan unless he got Tim Duncan. There was no plan B.
Yeah.
Oh, it was like
No, there
so
was a
obvious. It was just like, oh crap, what do I do now? Trade everything. Like
yeah.
there was no plan. There was no way to build up a stock of draft picks. There was no way to go out into free agency because
I think the only good thing he left us was Jim O'Brien.
well, Paul Pierce,
I
and he got him by mistake. Just kind
He
of
got him by mistake.
yeah.
Yeah. And like him, the stuff he was doing in the North End, like he's not a good person. He's
Well,
not a good
I would
person.
even say Paul Gaston deserves coal for hiring him. He was a shitty owner.
Yeah.
He hired him.
Hmm.
The only good thing Paul Gaston did was eventually sell the team to the Grossbeck family, even though we didn't know Irv was in charge until recently. Who else gets coal, Mike?
Another guy got his contract and then just quit on the team, Mark Blunt. He had like that guy. He had a great season shooting the basketball, got his contract, and then bam, like he just quit playing. He was
38 million, I believe it
like
was. Yeah, 38 million
yeah,
for
like
four
woo.
years. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
talk about like getting paid. I remember that team had him and Ricky Davis on it at the same time. They got traded to Minnesota and like Kevin Garnett was like crying in the locker room after a game, like pleading with his team. And there's a story about Mark Blunt and Ricky Davis laughing at him in the locker room.
I didn't know
That's
that.
that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the Mark Blunt. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, I was a fan of his too. I was like, oh, this guy's gonna be really good. And then he got his contract.
Didn't Patino draft?
Uh,
I don't want to go back to Patino, but didn't he draft Jerome Moiso too, the French guy?
yes, with the lottery pick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who else?
Yeah.
Who else gets coal from you? Anyone?
Uh, I just Yeri Welsh because I remember saying
Gary
waking up
Wells.
saying like
God.
Like,
What
oh,
did
this
he
is
do
the
wrong?
European Michael. This is the European Michael Jordan. Like Tommy Heinsohn was like, oh, he's like unbelievable, and then like he fucking sucked. He was
But
like the
Ainge got a
worst.
first round pick from him for him when he traded him.
We trade. Oh, really?
Yeah, Ainge ended up getting
We
a
got a
first round.
first round pick for you. Well, that guy really. He must
Yeah,
have had some sort of reputation because what he gave you on the court was absolutely nothing. He was horrible. I remember getting all excited about him because everybody was telling me like he's the European Michael Jordan. He wasn't even the European. Um, yeah, he was horrible. He's just a horrible basketball player. So, who you got, Jim?
I get two. I get two. The obvious Kyrie. I mean, God, you quit in the play.
Oh, I missed him.
Yeah, you quit
Yes.
in the playoffs in everything. The promise he was going to be here, so he gets cold. He'll always get cold. He doesn't. He probably doesn't believe in Christmas. So he'll see coal as a metaphor for something wonderful. Gives me energy. This coal gives me energy, even if it's dirty. I'll wash it off.
Well,
Zen.
he certainly gets his coal every time he comes to Boston. Now he
So I'll
doesn't want
give
to
him
hear
coal.
forever.
The other guy, I'm sure he's a nice guy, and like he didn't do anything um, with malice here. But AC Earl, remember AC Earl, the first round pick?
Yeah,
I'd never seen an
yeah.
NBA player move so slow. And then the thing that killed me is like again back in the day where you get your information by opening the Patriot Ledger or the Boston Herald or Globe the next day. He goes to the Raptors, and I'm, you know, rummaging through the sports section.
Did he score 50?
He scored like 45 points or something for the Raptors.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah.
just envision in my head because there's no league pass or anything. So I'm trying to envision in my head, how does AC Earl score 45 points in an NBA game? And like, to this day, I cannot understand how that was even possible. Because
Probably
he
on
didn't
YouTube.
rebound the ball. He had no post up moves. He literally could not run down the court. Like, so for him to score 45 points, and the other guy, I guess it would be Vin Baker. I know he had his demons or whatever, but when the team is saying you're out with toes,
Yeah, oh,
you
nervous
know,
Purvis Ellison. That's another
nervous,
guy who didn't play.
Nervous Purvis actually, he was he was brought here with like a reputation of things not going well for him and a lot of injuries. He wasn't terrible here. He was okay. He played up to your expectations anyway, because your expectations weren't out of whack when he came here because his history previously wasn't great. When he
It
came into
was like
the
a
league, the expectations were high for him.
it
But
was like a full decade to 15 years where the Celtics just didn't have any good bigs. Like
mm,
they were playing Andrew DeClercq, they were playing Vitaly Balatinko, Tony Petit. Like
Vitaly
they just didn't
Potapiko.
have.
So I
Yeah,
got a
they
great
just.
story about Vitaly Potapiko. I used to work at the Black Rose.
Probably close.
So it's a Black Rose. I was a bouncer there or a doorman, whatever you want to call it. And he comes in, and the man is gigantic. He's like
Oh,
6'10", and he's wide, and he
yep.
just looks like, you think of the big Czechoslovakian in the Sopranos episode. He's like two times the size of him, right? And
Hmm.
so the bar, is where the bar is, and the tap is probably a good 6 feet behind the bar, right? And the Irish bartender is yelling, closing time, closing time. And he just looks at the bartender, he grabs his glass, reaches all the way over to the tap from behind the bar, and starts pouring his own beer. And the
That's
bartender
awesome.
the bartender looks at me and starts yelling, "Get him out of here! Get him out of here!" And I just look at him like, "What the F do you want me to do with this giant
That.
of a man? You want me to drag his
Yeah.
ass out? He's twice the size of me, got 100 pounds at least, and just like it was an amazing thing to watch. The bartender's getting pissed. I'm in awe that this man
Yeah.
reached over the bar and he's like pulling the tap. It just reminds you just how ginormous these humans are. That are professional athletes. Mike, one last question on advice. It's Christmas time.
All right.
We may have another.
Okay.
If not, honestly, I hope everyone has a great Christmas out there. But we all have to
Yeah.
go to family parties. So we talked about in Thanksgiving, how do we deal with the political element, the guy that won't shut up about whatever side. Christmas
Yeah.
I never really got a sense that Christmas was you run into the political uncle. Usually that's toned down. You're a little bit away from election seasons. Everyone's spirits up. What you run into, and almost undoubtedly in every family, is the aunt and uncle that, or maybe it's a grandparent that's very nice, but they like to party. And
Yeah,
all of a
certainly in our
sudden,
family.
we're a couple hours in,
Mhm.
and they're 6 or 7 drinks,
Sneaking off to the bathroom.
and
Who
they're
knows what's
all of a
going
sudden
on?
really, really getting close to you when they're talking, and they are getting loud, and it's pretty clear that they're there to have a good time, and you're there because you're obligated to. So,
Yeah.
how do you deal? Mike, advice by Mike, how do you deal with the close talking drunk relative that wants your attention and wants to be the center of attention? Like, what do you do at these parties?
Wow, you stumped me a little bit here.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't do well in these situations. I just get really uncomfortable and kind of freeze up and like hope
Well,
they
was
stop
there a
talking.
time that you would just join in, for example, and you just say, screw it, let's party?
Um, yeah, maybe, yeah, I would. I don't drink anymore, so, but back then, yeah, I probably would have just partied. That's advice that you can have if you have a ride home and they're a good time. Some of these family members aren't a good time. You know what I mean? Like some of them, like they're like falling over themselves and like they can't handle what they're drinking. Like I can speak from experience at some of the parties I've been at with certain people. I would say that you can just walk away. They're not gonna remember. They're not gonna remember if you just like you can be a little rude too, like, hey, can you back up a little bit? They're not gonna remember. They're
I,
not
I
gonna
think a
remember
good
that you
move is a
told them to
handoff.
screw.
Is a handoff.
Yeah,
You
the
bring
handoff's a
someone,
good
you
one
bring
too.
someone into the conversation. Maybe you don't really, they're not your favorite cousin. Hey,
Hmm.
cousin Tom, come on over. You haven't talked to Uncle Barry in a while, and you bring up a conversation. Then you just give the Irish goodbye, and you back on out of it.
Yeah,
You leave Tom with
yeah.
Barry, and you make Tom, Barry, you make
Oh,
Tom
oh,
Barry.
I gotta go get a drink.
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta go get a
Uncle
drink.
Barry, you want a beer? I'll be right back. And you just don't come
Oh,
back.
if you got a kid, if you
Yeah.
got a kid, I gotta go check on my kids. I gotta go check on
Whoa.
what they're up to. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, that's a good one. Um,
And usually this
yeah,
aunt
I
and
did.
uncle that likes to party has kids as well. And those kids are probably just going off the wall at this point, and they're just, it's Christmas
That's
Eve,
that's a
baby.
really that's a real
I'm not
accurate
dealing with
statement.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry that it's not a great advice for me today. I was stumped. I was stumped. I've had so many of those situations that you think I'd be better at handling it, but I just
Does anyone go to hell in these situations, Pastor Mike?
no. Does anyone go to hell? Yeah, you're drinking the devil's poison. You're gonna rot in hell.
Gluttony. It's gluttony. So we delivered cold. We gave some advice. We talked about one of the few times this year that the Celtics sports season. Um, I think we'll try to get one more pod in before the Christmas break, but if not, we'll talk to you after the Sixers game, everybody, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone.
All right, Merry Christmas to everybody too.
Bye. We have as I said early in the pod, we have a special guest today joining us for an interview. Cameron Tabatabaie from Celtics Wire, has contributed to Celtics Wire, US and USA Today, also host of the great Celtics Lab Podcast, which I believe is part of the CLNS Media Network. Do I have that right? All right,
You
very
do,
good.
yeah.
And Cameron, thanks a ton for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, as we discussed, my mom is a Quigley, so I couldn't say no. And
Yeah,
when you said Michael Pina came on, I mean, Mike's the best, so I had to follow his lead, I guess.
absolutely. I know it was great. A lot of fun with Michael. That was right after the Sixers had made their moves and the Knicks had made theirs. And Michael was actually high on the Sixers moves and down
Yeah,
on the Knicks. And neither one has really worked out that great. I don't think thus far, anyway, especially not the Sixers. God, that's,
no,
not
that's
that I'm,
bad. That looks pretty ugly.
not that I'm shedding any tears there at all. That works for me. Now, as a kid, was your mom called Quigs? Um,
I think she was Mary Q because I just like doxed my mom.
oh,
Because
okay.
well, she was one of six, so there were a lot of Quigleys,
Oh,
just on that street alone. Which is the case with Quigleys, I guess. I
yeah.
think she was Mary Q. I don't know. I know she went by Scoops for a little bit because she played softball.
Oh, that's a great nickname. That is a
Yeah,
great
I
nickname,
think I have that
Scoops.
right.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Um, hey, what are your thoughts just early on? We're a little more than a quarter way into the season. The Celtics continue to play 800 basketball, which I feel like it's been going on for
Yeah,
two, almost two whole seasons now, at least, since midway through that Ime year, um, or beyond two whole seasons now, I guess. What is just your thought on this, as they hit this quarter mark and they, start to stretch this out a little bit?
it's good. It's easy.
Yeah.
I find myself looking up players like career highs and team records a lot because they keep setting those. I feel like every night I'm reminding myself, how many assists has Pritchard ever had, or how many rebounds has Derek ever had? Because they just they're kicking a lot of butt. It's fantastic if you're a fan. It's really good. There's it's a long enough season that it's the things to nitpick. I suppose you could ask questions about Drew Holiday. I suppose you could be worried about Jaylen Brown, but not really. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. They're fantastic, and the fact remains that there isn't a team even as close to as deep or redundant as this team. So when I first got started writing about this, I was just reflecting on this. This today is the 10-year anniversary of when Rondo got traded to the Mavericks, and that was my
Oh,
first season covering the team.
yeah.
And almost everything I wrote, I just kind of wanted to end like, but we don't know because obviously they're going to trade everyone on the roster anyways. And this season, I feel like I want to end everything with, and then we'll just wait and see in the spring because everything is so geared towards the spring, obviously. But unless, knock on wood and anything else, unless something bad happens, this team is so much deeper than the rest that it's hard to feel worried about them.
Yeah, no, they're still the perennial favorites. I think there's no doubt. And you could nitpick. I mean, the point differential, I don't believe is what it was a
Sure.
season ago, but it does feel like some of the bad teams are starting to fall off a little bit more. So perhaps we're going to see more blowouts as we move forward. Um, And you mentioned Jaylen Brown, but I wonder if some of those early season struggles were just due to, a shoulder ailment or whatever he was dealing with. He was
Mm-hmm.
his finishing around the rim was a little bit more suspect than we used to seeing, but that seems to be getting cleaned up um, over the last couple weeks, anyways. Um, and even, the positive signs with Pritchard, and then you look, Tatum seems to have figured out, a bit better shot selection. I know you
Mm-hmm.
touched on this a bit, I believe in one of your articles, right? How he's kind of looking to avoid the step back three. Um, and so things are going okay there, but every team there is some landmines, but I just struggle to figure out what they are besides the obvious, which is what everyone worries about is injuries, right? What,
Yeah.
you know, I guess they play a variance game where
Yep.
if they shoot very poorly during the playoff season, they could get beat. But we also kind of saw that against Dallas last year. They didn't shoot great in that NBA Finals, with the exception of maybe a game or two, and they
Yeah.
still kind of dominated. It,
No, I mean, that's what the trade-off is once every 10 games, they're going to shoot, 15, 20% from three, and it's going to be a big part of their offense. And to your point, I mean, go back to the Miami Heat series, right? What was it, game two or game three that they lost, where Boston shot like 17% from three, and Miami hit all their threes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that,
You mean the first round last year?
yeah, first round.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to some of the most disappointing, even if you go back, I think it's the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, game seven,
Oh
Celtics. The
God,
Celtics got
they
lucky.
could have thrown it in the ocean. Yeah,
They couldn't throw in the ocean. And then Houston later that night had a worse 3-point shooting night. So Houston got hung out to dry, and Boston was overachieving at the time. So yeah, there's always that. You saw that in the NBA Cup last night. I mean, the Thunder couldn't hit anything.
no,
That being said, Boston is better, first of all, better equipped to weather that. I mean, they just have so many phenomenal shooters. But if Porzingis is healthy, it just gives them like another way to play inside. But Jason and Jalen are both better at moderating their shot selection. I think the lazy take around Mazzulla is that they're just hucking threes, when in reality they're almost always really good shots. So
Very unselfish. I Extraordinarily unselfish team, I feel like.
yeah, at times I really was enamored by the Spurs teams from the mid 2000s and specifically the 20 teens when they started leaning on the 3-point shot and just the ball would go around and around and around. And Boston's so talented that I kind of wish every possession looked like that. Um, so if you did want to nitpick, I do think as good as they are at helping each other, they could pass even more. Um, and yeah, to your point, look, at some point in the playoffs, they're going to have a game where they don't hit their threes and maybe they even lose a game and the sky is going to be falling because the people who don't like the 3-point shot are going to say, see, we told you so. But if you trust the process and trust the math, it comes out in the wash in favor of the Celtics.
Yeah, and they're so highly skilled. I mean, ridiculously highly skilled, just 1 through 8, that this volume three offense is really more based off, getting the best shot,
Mm-hmm.
with the skill they have on the floor. And a lot of teams are trying to emulate that, but it's not really translating into winning basketball. It's the
Yeah.
Celtics. I mean, Charlotte is trying to play the style the Celtics are playing, where they're switching everything on defense. They're trying to get, outshoot the opponents from 3-point land, and they just don't have the skill to be able to win consistently. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
I saw a stat with the top 10 3-point teams in the league, attempt wise, it's only the Celtics and maybe one other team, Cleveland, I forget,
Mm-hmm.
that is, actually playing like consistently winning basketball at a high level. And so, yeah, I think the skill set. So I guess my next question to you is, last year I really worried about playing the Nuggets in the finals because I really felt
Sure.
that wasn't a great matchup. We saw what Murray and Jokic were able to do that to them in the two-man game. I don't worry about that Nuggets team as much as I did last
Mm-hmm.
year. They were obviously not playing nearly the level they used to, especially on the defensive side. Is there a team out there right now, matchup wise, that you look at it and say, this could get scary?
Probably the answer is no. I mean, the only team in the East that I think is worth putting a pin in would be the Bucks because I think Giannis
Yeah.
is such a talented player. He's the best player in the series, and usually that's a big advantage in the NBA. But then if you look at the Sixers and the Cavs or the Knicks, they're just so thin on the wing, and that's where the Celtics thrive. That I just the advantage has to be in Boston's favor. It's funny. I think the Thunder is the sexy pick, but um, they're so young. I mean, we spent how many years looking at the Celtics team and looking at their stars and saying they're very talented, but they're not ready to win. Like there's a psychological game, there's a stamina game, emotional stamina to winning at the highest level, and they're too young. And I think that's what we saw in the 22 finals, right?
I saw a little bit last night.
And you saw that exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
last night is a one-off, and if they hit their
Yeah.
threes, maybe it's a different game. But you did see that they. I don't think Shea, was like wilting under the lights. He's a more established player, but the rest of the guys, it's not clear. So I would imagine Boston's advantage against Oklahoma City, if they did meet in the finals, would just be like really obvious in terms of poise and maturity. And then I don't know. I challenge anyone to find a team that is. I mean, now with Pritchard as 7 deep, the way that the Celtics are. I mean, is Pritchard the only player that can't really play multiple positions on this team and like plausibly so? And if he's going to keep shooting like that, who cares? So, geez, Louise, I guess I'll take the Bucks just because I think so highly of Giannis, but it's not like that's a particularly deep roster.
No, I guess Pritchard's the only guy that, if in a playoff series, if he had to play larger minutes than expected, if Holiday and White
Mm-hmm.
went down there, he'd be a liability on the defensive end just because of size, where he'd be
Yeah.
targeted in a playoff series. But outside of that, you're right. I The Thunder would be the only team that, I know they're the sexy pick that would scare me a bit if you remove the variable of, not being there and the experience. And you saw last night, I thought with some guys, they held the ball a little bit too tight, maybe before,
Mm-hmm.
but I just see if Chet Holmgren is able to come back, and he is,
Yeah.
they report that he should come back, and then the size they have inside, the ability that they have to put guards in really a chamber on defense, and then they have wing defenders. They have that side of the ball locked down,
Yeah.
as well as anyone that's not the Boston Celtics in the league. Um, their inability to shoot the 3-point ball at times is their Achilles heel, and Holmgren does help with that. I don't think it's a cure-all, but he does help with that. And I just think that would be the matchup if they could get over that hump of, the lights being so bright and that inexperience. They would be the
Yeah.
team that would worry me the most, I think.
Although whoever's got to come out of the West, I mean, the West is going to be such a bloodbath
It's going
that
to be
you
tough.
have to imagine the whole like Boston had a cakewalk to the finals is a tired, boring narrative, but they really didn't exert so much there. Whereas
Yeah.
whoever's coming out of the West, I mean, that's just going to be such a slog. Um, but
And
yeah, I mean,
they got a good team in Dallas. The Dallas deserved to be in the finals last year. The Celtics were just the worst matchup ever for the Dallas
yeah,
Mavericks, and it hasn't improved for them. If the Celtics and Mavericks matched up again today for a 7-game series, I wouldn't think it'd go more than 5. But
yeah. I never understood people who thought that was going to be that close to a series, even if Dallas is a phenomenal club. It's just yeah, it was a disaster draw for the Mavericks.
absolute disaster draw. So with that, we talked a bit about, and you mentioned the Bucks and what Giannis, the fear factor there, and it's really disappointing that the Celtics are not going to see them again at all this year because you have a little bit of
Hmm.
juice there, especially between him and Jalen, which I think is a ton of fun as a fan. There
Hmm.
isn't a lot of that in the league. The league needs more of that hatred, I think.
For
Sports
sure.
hatred is good,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think. I think it's good. And certainly a ton of that with the Garnett teams and obviously the 80 Celtics teams. So love to see these two teams match up again. That matchup last night between the Bucks and the Thunder, I actually thought the Thunder was going to roll. I
hmm.
think I do think they're a much better team overall than the Bucks, but in that 1-game setup, anything can happen. What were your overall thoughts on the game, the cup in general, and if you think the league should make any changes going forward?
So I'm pretty loud and proud about how much I do not like the cup. Um, I just the NBA sometimes feels like an inside joke, and if you're not in on the joke, it doesn't do a good job of welcoming you to the party. And
Right. I think that's a great analysis. Yeah.
I think those courts are so antagonistic. I get that it's supposed to signal, hey, this is something different and special, and now you know. If you talk to a casual fan, no one decided to keep watching or tune in because of the courts. But I found a lot of people found it off-putting. And then the point differential, you're just asking people to, people turn on sports to forget about work and forget about this, that, and the other, and you're asking them to do arithmetic. I don't know. Um, so I thought the knockout state, I mean, excuse me, the group play needs a lot of work. I think the easiest fix is to make it divisions every year. If you tell me, hey, the Celtics need to beat the Knicks and the Sixers to do this, I'm excited. I'm willing to
Yeah.
do a little bit of math there, but the Celtics need to watch the Magic play the Bucks on a Tuesday when the Celtics aren't playing. It just gets uninteresting. Then the knockout stage is quite good. Winner takes all is always the best format for sports, and the NBA doesn't really have that, so that's a lot of fun. I think that that's really interesting. I was happy to see that they didn't have a blue court for the finals; that it was
Yeah.
actually just like a normal looking court. I really don't think Vegas works.
I
There's
don't think
just
I think go ahead. I have some thoughts on
it's
that.
just
Yeah.
so clear it's not a city where fans are going to get raucous, and they're just playing music during the game, and there's a lot of empty seats, and it just seems casual. It seems like what we don't like about the All Star game, and so I don't know. The NBA desperately is telling us, like, look, here's Michael Imperioli, and it's fun, and it's in Vegas, and you really should care about this. But then the game itself, it doesn't seem like anyone is taking seriously. So that's tough. Kudos to the Bucks and the Thunder; they took it seriously. I mean, that was a pretty physical game, which was fun. Um, I quite, I think it's a great draw that was the matchup. That was fantastic. I liked it. I was going to tune in because I love the NBA. I mean, financial incentives to tune in as well. I don't know that I
Yeah,
believe
I did
that
too.
the average sports fan is tuning in. Maybe the average sports fan who has a gambling app on their phone is a little more interested, but like in the finals, I could talk to my grandma about the games. Like that's how you know this has reached another level of interest, right? There's no way my grandma knows anything about the NBA Cup. I don't think my mom knows anything about the NBA Cup. So if it's a reward for NBA fans, I think it works and it needs to be tweaked. If it's a way to introduce new fans to the product, I think it has not done a very successful job there.
No, I don't think it really has either, and I know they try in the soccer model. I think I like the idea of divisions.
Mm-hmm.
There's some juice behind maybe you play the Knicks an extra game, the Sixers an extra game during the season. As a fan, I get up for those games and make sure I don't miss those games. There's nothing interesting about them watching them play the Wizards. Even
Yeah.
the Hawks ended up being a really fun, entertaining team this year, but you didn't know that going in and you didn't feel that beforehand. The Vegas thing, I just, they tried it. It feels like I'm watching the bubble again.
Yeah.
You can't even tell fans are there. It's
Mm-hmm.
so quiet. There is no, I feel like neutral sports sites only work if it's huge. If it's a World Cup
Yeah.
or Super Bowl, you're going to have that intensity there regardless of the site. It doesn't work for something like this. I figure out a way to reward a team to get a extra home court game. That way, at least you have that visual on TV where you have a crowd into it, and that adds excitement. You think about watching a playoff game as a kid, and the crowd always plays such a huge role, unless it's Miami. And so it's it's like I think that element would really help, and especially in places like Oklahoma City. If that was a home game in Oklahoma City last
Yeah.
night, how cool would that have been? Or
It would have huge juice.
meaningful basketball in Orlando. That might be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Where there that really hasn't happened. So that would be a change I would make. Um, and if that means, you know, eh, paying the team that wins a little bit more because you're taking away that Vegas element, so maybe you're losing the player buy-in there. Well, if you're having UAE basically sponsor your tournament anyways, then you can figure out a way to pay these guys a
Yeah,
little
there's
bit.
more money in the coffers, I'm sure.
Yeah, on how we're going to do this. Um, Outside, the other thing I hate as a fan, as an NBA fan, I hate that there's no games tonight now. I hate that this
Yeah.
is like an extended All-Star break and there's nothing like to watch and put on in the background. To me, like
hmm
I love League Pass. I love listening to the different announcers around the league. I find that to be incredibly fun. I love the timeouts and everything that comes along with League Pass, and I hate not having it for a night. So that would be, the as a fan, um, I'd like to see. As Celtics fan, usually this time of year, we're starting to figure out who's available in trade, what blockbuster
hmm
trade we're going to make, and what's going to happen around the league. And maybe 15-year-old with me, I'd want to spend a lot of time talking about Jordan Springer possibly being moved. 45-year-old me, just not that very interesting. But what is interesting, and I think has kind of absorbed kind of this trade deadline for the Celtics, is this player development pipeline that
Yeah.
has really built up. And you guys did a great pod on this recently. Um, it was a few years back that I think it was Brad Stevens I mentioned that, they needed to be more like Miami in a sense of developing players. And this was even before this new CBA. Now with this new CBA, it's more important than ever
Big time. Yeah.
to have this pipeline. And you know, what do you see? First of all, was countless players we can talk about, whether it's Luke Cornett all the way to Drew Peterson. But is it is it something that happened in Maine? Being a reporter that has changed this is what has triggered this because this wasn't the case um, during much of the Danny Ainge era here.
Yeah.
They didn't do a great job in this, you know,
I think
previously.
I think Ainge at the end of his tenure was so focused on landing stars that building something sustainable wasn't as much of a focus. And yeah, I mean, if you think of the G League as AAA baseball, that's a time honored tradition, is actually using that as a developmental piece. And yeah, the landscape now is so unforgiving financially. I mean, there's 10 teams or something like that over the second apron, and the problem for those teams is they don't have a. So I mean, some of them just got a G League team, like the Suns, for example. When Ishbia buys a team, he brings in a G League team, so that you can see why that roster is so thin. They don't have a pipeline of talent. You have to credit the people in the Maine organization. I mean, they're doing something special up there. I think they try to play similar to the Boston Celtics, the Maine Celtics do. So there's continuity there. I think there's real buy-in from guys who get drafted who understand this is an opportunity. I mean, for Jordan Walsh, who at the end of last season, or maybe it was in the offseason, said something like, I'm ready for more playing time, which is not reading the room correctly. To then a few weeks ago, he says, when I went back to Maine, it was like I was Marcus Smart. For him to sincerely enjoy that experience, that's not nothing. I mean, I love Portland, Maine. It's a fabulous place.
It is a great city.
But if you're a 20-year-old millionaire getting on a bus or a charter plane, I actually don't know how they get there, and living out of a hotel room in Maine probably isn't that
During
sexy.
these
So you do
months
need to,
too. Yeah,
right?
during
So
winter months. Yeah.
there's got to be real buy-in there. So it's a phenomenal plug and play thing. Like, look, any would be 12th guy in the league is going to look better playing against next to Jason Tatum and Derek Brown. I mean, Derek White or Jaylen Brown for that matter, right? Drew Peterson benefits from how good his Celtics teammates are.
Yeah, of course.
But much like the Patriots in their heyday, this is just a do your job kind of organization, and that extends up to Maine. That guys understand it's not about you, it's about the collective. It's about what you can bring to that collective. It's about iron sharpening iron. So yeah, it's everything from like the coaches and the continuity to the players themselves to probably a little bit of luck. And I think to your point about Brad Stevens, I think he's been drafting guys who have the personality to thrive in a place like Maine. So yeah, if the rest of the league is not trying to emulate something like this, that they've kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, I saw a great thing from Jay Billis probably, and it relates to this a couple weeks ago, like on Instagram or whatever. But he was talking about he was speaking to a bunch of young players, role players,
Mm-hmm.
and he said role play, your role is not your identity. It's not
Yeah.
who you are. You are still you. You can still work on these other parts of your game. Your role is what your team needs from you right now. And then he went into, soliloquy much better than and much more eloquently than I can give right now. But I think the Celtics have done that throughout their player development. And to your point, they have players buy in, and they've really honed in on certain skills. And then maybe players grow from that as they get more mature and they go through the system. We're seeing a little bit more of that with Sam Hauser on the dribble drives and
Yeah.
developing different aspects of his game. But to me, Luke Cornett is just, I know I started with him, but he's my favorite example of this. This was a guy that was already in the league, had been in the league for, about 5 years or so, traded, bounced around in different places, had to take a bit of humble pie and
Mm-hmm.
not even have a contract with the Celtics. He signed with the Maine Celtics and completely changed his game. I mean, he was
Yeah.
a perimeter shooter for the most part coming out of college. That's what he was in the league early on. I don't think he's taken a three over the last 2 seasons. If he has, it's no more than two or three.
Mm-hmm.
And he's become a really good rim runner and a really good rim protector for his role. He's never going to be an all-star, may never be a starter in this league again, but he may get a nice contract because of what the Celtics have done for him. He may make a little bit of money the next time he's up for free agency. Um, and now we're seeing, his potential replacement. They're working that same way with the guy I think has the highest ceiling in Neemias Queta. Um, but this is, I really enjoy this. I thought this really hurt
Mm-hmm.
the Celtics during the past Garnett years where they didn't draft well, they didn't develop players well, and then they had to sign
Yeah.
guys like Jermaine O'Neal and Shaquille O'Neal that were well past their prime and couldn't even stay on the floor. to fill some of these spots. These guys are all capable players, and they're young and they're good. And Luke Kennett, he's just my favorite example of this. Is they saw something there that wasn't being utilized, and they figured out how to make it work. And he
Mhm.
fulfills the role that they need. Um, and is there a guy? Obviously, mine's Kennett. But is there a guy that that stands out to you in that regard?
Yeah, well, I will say like it's not going to be 100%. I think JD Davison is a nice young man, but and
Yeah.
he is outstanding in the G League, but I don't see
Yeah,
how it
I
can
agree.
translate
Yeah.
to the pro game, and part of that is he's just a little too small, right? But then Luke, they said, look, do these three things particularly well, and you're going to get playing time, and not to be reductive, but you'll probably get a contract out of it. To your point, which is really, I'm sure, a good incentive structure. Um, yeah, Drew Peterson's fascinating. I think Sam. I said this the other day. This sounds mean, but let me try it on for size. Drew Peterson kind of has a big head, and so he kind of looks shorter than he is. Like if you see him from afar, he looks
Yeah.
kind of like a short guy, but he's fully on 6'9". I mean, he's
Yeah.
quite tall, and kind of like Sam Hauser. I think he's stronger than you're anticipating. So when he puts the
Quicker
ball on the
too. Yeah.
floor, you're kind of surprised. When he defends well, you're kind of surprised. Um, so Sam Hauser is a brilliant shooter. I don't know that I mean, Drew Peterson could ever quite top that, but yeah, between Kada and Peterson, if they're really getting a real ninth and 10th guy out of dudes who they just kind of like found in Maine, that's really stellar stuff. So I don't think anyone is going to go from Maine and challenge a role as a starter anytime soon. But especially the next few years, I mean, money is going to be so tight for all the teams
Yeah.
that want to contend, but particularly the Celtics. So if they can get real playable guys on G League contracts, even just to soak up minutes and fouls in the regular season, that's huge.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. No, I agree. And if they can continue to develop these guys, and they're gonna need to, and because they're probably gonna have to make some really uncomfortable,
Yep.
disappointing decisions to fans, within the next season or two with some of these contracts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just going to happen. I got my daughter texting me right now saying she needs a ride, but do you know, did you know what Drew Peterson's college coach called him when he was there? Do you know the
No.
story? They called him Rue Peterson because he played no D.
Huh. That's funny. That's
So
really funny.
he's obviously
Drew
come a long
Peterson.
way here.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll see
yeah,
if I can. I'll see if I can get that going.
yeah. Rue. They just called him Rue Peter. I'm trying. Where did he go to school? But his head coach called him Rue Peterson because he played no D. Yeah. So it's a great little fun fact about him. Uh, but hey, Cameron, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
If you have a favorite poison, let me know. We're happy to ship it out to you, whatever that may be. And but really, really appreciate this. Follow your work. Anything you'd want to say out there to our very few followers that follow you or whatever as we end this pod.
I just want to wish people happy holidays. If they want to find my work, they'll go find it. No, I'm thrilled you reached out. I had a lot of fun. And again, one Quigley to another. I mean, I was bound to do this.
That sounds great. And how is the Lexington High basketball team this year? Do we know?
We don't. The girls team is phenomenal. The boys
Good.
team, I think, it's a transition year. I think
Okay. All right. Very good. Very
full of
good.
heart.
Full of heart. I love high school basketball.
Yeah,
Anytime I can get to a gym, I'm there. So, used to officiate. All right.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
thank you,
cool.
Kim. Take care.
Sure. Likewise.